When I went to G City for school, Jack was busy with all the girls in the circle. But suddenly, he got interested in me, the plain-looking, shy girl. His intense pursuit eventually won me over. But less than a month into the relationship, he said he was bored. On the breakup day, I walked into the rain without looking back. Some people were worried, thinking that the good girl might harm herself. But Jack was too consumed with a new love to care, casually asking his buddy for a favor. "Mark, can you check on her? I'm worried she might do something stupid like jump into the ocean." That night, the island was drenched in rain, and Mark found me soaked, holding me and telling Jack over the phone, "Found her. Have fun." Then he softly whispered in my ear, "Don't worry. She's being good." Jack called me and asked me to meet him at his usual hangout spot in room 808. It was raining just as I got there. The rain messed up my hair, and as soon as I stepped into the club's chilly air, I shivered. The door to the room was slightly open, and I could hear someone singing inside. It took me a while to spot Jack. He was holding a very young and pretty girl. When he saw me, his expression didn't change at all. He even held the girl closer. I stood there, blank and confused. Jack had chased me passionately for a year, and we'd been dating less than a month. Just 3 days ago, he was sweetly holding my face, saying he loved me. But here he was, with another girl, one much prettier than me. "Nina," Jack said flatly, "I've got to straighten a few things out with you." The room quieted down. I felt out of place and embarrassed. "I liked you a lot at first," Jack continued, slurring slightly from the drink, "but I'm in this for love, not sainthood." His voice was kind, though. "I respect your wishes. If you weren't ready, that's fine. Thing is, I'm done now, so let's break up." My wet hair clung to my face, icy against my skin. I couldn't hear anything around me or see the strange looks everyone else was giving me. I just stared at Jack, stunned. "But 3 days ago, you said you loved me." "Jack, I didn't mind you kissing me, I just wasn't ready." "Enough, Nina." Jack raised his hand, interrupting me. "I want to break up now. Do you understand?" Tears that had been hanging in my eyes suddenly spilled over. I grew up in a single-parent home, average-looking, timid. I felt invisible through middle and high school, even into college, until I came to G City and met Jack. It was my first time being pursued so passionately and cared for. I fell for him so easily. But now he says he's bored. Was it because of the kiss I avoided? Or because I turned down his offer to move in together? I was confused and still hoping to fix things. "Jack, can we not break up?" "Nina, do you want me to say something that'll hurt you?" Jack frowned. "I just don't like you anymore, okay? My taste was just temporarily off." I wiped my tears and took 2 steps back. "I get it, Jack. Don't contact me again, okay?" "Sure, I can do that," he replied. I nodded hard, trying to force a smile, but tears kept falling. "I'm leaving. Enjoy yourselves." I wiped my tears again and stumbled out of the room. "She's so basic. How'd you ever like someone like her?" the girl next to Jack suddenly asked. A moment's whim. Jack took a sip of his drink and glanced toward the door. The first time he'd seen Nina, he knew she was timid and nice. When he had asked for her number, her big round eyes looked like she might faint any second. It was amusing. He hadn't met a girl like that before, it intrigued him. But that was all, it wasn't patience he had. The rain outside intensified. Someone quietly said, "Won't Nina do something stupid?" Hard to say, she seemed pretty broken just now. "Jack, shouldn't you check on her?" A thunderclap tore through the dark sky, and Jack put down his drink. "Mark." He looked over to the corner where Mark had been silent all night. Jack didn't trust others to check on her, they were all too rowdy, and Nina was too innocent and naive. But Mark, the prince of both light and dark world, had no interest in girls. "Mind having a look for me?" If she does jump into the ocean, that's going to be a hassle. Mark lifted his eyes slowly, his gaze indifferent as he looked at his friend. Jack already regretted asking. Mark wasn't one to care about other people's business, so this was foolish. If you don't want to. All right. Mark suddenly agreed. Jack was a bit surprised. But Mark had already stood, grabbed his jacket, and headed out. The rain was really pouring down. I waited on the stairs for a while. The doorman asked for the third time if I needed an umbrella or a cab. I numbly nodded yes. With an umbrella over me, I walked into the heavy rain without hesitation. Maybe it was the rain, but soon after, I felt dizzy and heavy-headed. The wind and rain were strong, my umbrella flapping around. That's when Mark's Rolls-Royce pulled up in front of me. The rear window lowered, revealing his cold, indifferent face. My chilled fingers clutched the umbrella handle tightly, instinctively stepping back. I'd heard Jack mention a few times that Mark's family had some mob connections. My understanding of that came from movies where mobsters were all ruthless and murderous. So, meeting Mark for the first time, I was terrified, never daring to look him in the eye. Get in the car. I had just stepped back when Mark spoke. The raindrops hammered on the umbrella like popping corn, making his words more startling. My steps froze, eyes wide in fear. The heavy rain blurred my vision of his expression. All I felt was fear, the kind that reminded me of being small and insignificant as an ant. Trembling, I moved to the car. The driver stepped out, opening the door for me, taking the umbrella. I whispered thanks and climbed in, feeling like my legs weighed a ton. My soaked sneakers left muddy footprints on the clean floor. I felt awkward, unsure where to put my hands or feet, wishing to shrink or become invisible. The car moved smoothly forward. The headlights cut through the rainy haze, and the Rolls-Royce rolled on like a lone boat on the sea, its destination unknown. Just as I was lost in thought, Mark suddenly called my name. Nina. Here. Snapping back to reality, I instinctively looked at the man beside me. Mark's suit was a mess, and 3 buttons of his shirt were undone. He leaned back in the car seat, legs sprawled out casually, looking like a lion ready to pounce. He had this intimidating vibe of someone who controlled everything. I quickly looked away, my heart beat like a drum. Where were we heading? What was Mark planning? Murder? Dismemberment? Dumping me in the ocean with ice blocks? Or worse, sell me on the black market? But I hadn't wronged him, had I? He nudged my jeans with his shoe and gestured at his knee. Come here. My mind went blank, my face burning. He arched an eyebrow at my hesitation. Come, sit here. His voice was clear, Mandarin almost perfect. I heard but couldn't act, he grew impatient. The car suddenly bounced, and my heart nearly leapt out of my chest. All sorts of bloody scenes flooded my mind, and my nerves were on edge. Before my mind caught up, my body had already reacted. I scrambled onto his knee, obediently positioning myself as he indicated. Mark smirked, handing me a soft towel. Wipe your face. I took it, his phone rang. He answered lazily, Jack. I dropped the towel. Mark glanced at me, chuckling. Found her, he said. His voice was low in the enclosed space. Have fun. Holding the phone with one hand, his other hand gently grasped my chin. It poured outside, visibility was low, and the car jostled unsteadily. My body lurched forward, accidentally brushing against Mark's cheek. His breath was warm and ambiguous on my ear, making me freeze. Mark didn't push me away, he lightly kissed the corner of my lips. His voice was husky, don't worry, she's being good. The call ended. In the secluded small world created by the car's partition, Mark's fingers caressed my chin, steadily pulling me closer. Nina, he murmured, his grip firm. I winced, forced to open my mouth slightly. It was the perfect opportunity for him to capture me in a deep kiss. Jack doesn't like obedient girls, but I do. He kissed passionately, and I awkwardly couldn't catch my breath, nearly running out of air. Mark paused, slid his fingers into my hoodie, and tenderly grasped my waist until my breath was erratic, eyes moist. Clutching his sleeve, my nerves trembled with tension. "Don't be scared," he reassured me, pecking me softly. "Not our first time here." By early morning, the rain had calmed. Jack stood by the window, distractedly lighting a cigarette. A friend approached with a sigh. "Nina's timid, probably scared witless now. Mark wouldn't give her a hard time. He hates women, especially weepy ones." Jack exhaled smoke. "Scaring her is a good thing. You liked her for a year, then tired after a month? She's like a log." Jack chuckled. "She wouldn't let me kiss or touch her. I'm not a monk. Take it slow, Nina's a good girl." Jack leaned on the glass, smiling. "After all this, she'll be more manageable." "You've got skills," his friend laughed. "Nina can't handle you. She'll be listening to you." "I won't bully her." Jack put out the cigarette. "Stay away for now, let her cool off." "Sure. Let me know when you win her over." "She's no beauty," Jack said, "but clean up, and she looks good." Finishing my shower, I found Mark smoking on the balcony. Shirtless, in dark blue pajama pants hung low on his waist. His chest and abs on display. I stood awkward, unable to speak or find courage to approach. Mark's words from the car replayed in my mind, like distant thunder. "Aren't you coming?" Mark put out his cigarette, glancing my way. "It's not raining," I mumbled nervously. Mark's house was huge. If he kept me, I wouldn't find my way out. He turned, leaned on the white railing, eyeing me. "What do you want?" His hair damp, eyes a chilling depth. Mustering courage, I glanced, lowering my eyes quickly. "I want to go back to school." "In the middle of the night?" "Some friends rent nearby, I can stay." "Afraid of me?" I shook my head, though my face paled. Mark's gaze was on me, from head to toe. I wore the satin loungewear, resembling a couple's set matching his. "You can return to school," he said. My eyes widened at his sudden agreement. Jack often warned Mark's temperament was notoriously difficult. Yet now, he seemed agreeable. "Nina, come here." Hesitant, I finally approached, buying my exit. I remained a meter away. He was taller than Jack. In slippers, I barely reached his chest. "How long were you with Jack?" My lips pressed tight. Hearing Jack's name, my heart ached with sharp pain. Mark's question brought tears. "A month and 3 days. You remember well." "First love's unforgettable," I replied, nostalgic for Jack. "Why wouldn't you let him kiss you?" Mark grasped my chin, making me meet his gaze. Tears threatened. I didn't want to cry, not for Jack. Yet the tears welled. "Not ready." I turned away, but Mark held firm. "Yet you let me kiss you in the car." Being obedient, huh? Talking about the car's chaos, my heart grew resentful. I wouldn't have lost my first kiss if not terrified. "Scared of me?" Mark chuckled. "I won't eat you." "But you kill people." "Who said that?" "Everyone." "So you're obedient out of fear?" I kept my eyes down and didn't say a word. Mark let go of me, and his voice suddenly turned cold. "You're staying here for the next few days." "No, I was really anxious. You promised me earlier that I could go back to school." "I just said that it's not impossible to go back to school." "What do I have to do for you to let me go back?" "I can't miss classes. I've fought so hard to get this exchange year. I just want to graduate smoothly, get a job, and finally, break away from my family. Simple." Mark reached out, his long fingers brushing aside my slightly damp hair by my temple. "Kiss me. Just once?" Mark seemed amused by my naive stupidity. "Kiss me until I'm satisfied." My eyes widened bit by bit. I couldn't believe someone could say such audacious words. Mark suddenly hooked his arm around my waist. With just a tiny force, I slammed into his bare chest. He looked down at me, his eyes slightly lowered, his breath carrying a faint minty tobacco smell. "Nina, if you can't kiss me until I'm satisfied." He smirked slightly. "The sea is right outside the door. I'll personally throw you in and feed you to the fish." Under his scorching palm, my skin was shivering. But Mark held me even tighter. My body nearly molded to his, fitting perfectly. The fear I felt in the car came rushing back. I opened my mouth, my tongue seemed tied. I stammered, asking, What do I need to do to make you satisfied?" Mark looked at the plain face in front of him. Not a beauty. Small eyes, faint brows. Her double eyelids barely marked, forming a fan shape at the ends. But her eyelashes were dense and long. Her nose wasn't that high, a little childish with a slight tilt. Her chin was round, with a small dimple. Her biggest asset was probably her fair skin. Her frame was more petite than average. When he held her, only one word came to mind. Soft and boneless. Mark thought of her on the car, obediently straddling his lap, wet hair with mist on her face. He kissed her lips, soft and bouncy like jelly. Oddly fascinating. She hadn't initiated a kiss yet. Just thinking about those interrupted kisses in the car was enough to stir him. She widened her eyes at him now, her dark pupils reflecting only his face. His gaze fell on her slightly puckered lips. After a hot shower, her lips returned to their original blush. He had a mischief, wanting to tarnish her. Want to know how? His fingers brushed against her lips. She seemed particularly sensitive, started to tremble lightly again. Mark chuckled, "You'll understand soon enough. Now, kiss me, Nina." I've never initiated a kiss with anyone. Mark was tall. I had to tiptoe to reach his lips. Maybe the atmosphere was too intimate. Maybe Mark's face was just too tempting. My head was buzzing. The moment I touched his lips, I felt like I'd explode with heat. "Open your mouth." Mark's voice was a bit hoarse. "Huh?" I stared at him, dumbfounded. The moment my lips parted, Mark took control. His kiss was deep, intense. I melted into his embrace, almost crushed. "Nina." Mark's warm palm lay over my eyes. "Close them." The rain, which had paused for a while, began to patter again. Raindrops breaking on the glass, rhythmically. In the vast bedroom, the sound of a man's labored breathing grew. After about half an hour, the room quieted down. I rubbed my sore wrist. Got up and kneeled on the bed. Mark leaned back, coming over to kiss my already swollen lips. "Tired?" I nodded, my wrist was sore and painful. My lips felt swollen, almost numb. The air had a strange scent lingering. I couldn't help but think, judging by Mark's expression earlier. Seems like he was satisfied, right? "Can I go now?" Mark seemed in a good mood, nodding. "You can go, I was just happy." But he added, "But come over again tomorrow night." "Why?" I was shocked. "Weren't you satisfied just now?" Mark frowned. "I can say that, but don't repeat it." "Though I was satisfied, you're too clumsy." Mark's gaze fell on my hands. "Clumsy, you have a lot to learn." "But you were clearly comfortable." He couldn't deny that. Her inept clumsiness was surprisingly stimulating. "Pick, finish it, or come to me every night." I didn't struggle long. "I'll come every night." Anything was better than going all the way. From my deeply ingrained beliefs, until marriage, sleeping with a guy was a no-no. "Send your class schedule to me. I'll pick you up." I summoned the courage to suggest, "Can I come by myself? If Mark comes to pick me up, it'd be a big deal around here." I didn't want attention, didn't want to be the talk of the town. "Don't worry, I'll swap cars." "What low-key car could you possibly get?" Mark shifted topics. Bring me cookies tonight, the kind you made. You know I make cookies? Mark had no emotion in his voice. You took some to Jack several times. He doesn't like them, but I think they're pretty good. He didn't eat any? No. I was a bit lost, a sour feeling rising. The thought of spending time making treats only for Jack to pass them on. Though not fancy gifts, they held my intentions. He could have just told me instead of giving them away. Sleep for a bit, I'll take you back at dawn. Mark pulled me into his arms. I tried to wriggle free, but he grabbed my hand, guiding it somewhere specific. Don't move, provoke it, and you'll still be the tired one. I instantly tensed up, daring not to move. Mark chuckled, such a good girl. Sleep now, Nina. I had pestered Mark the whole way. He finally agreed to stop a block before school. As I got out, I mustered the courage to ask. Tonight, can you pick me up here again? Mark leaned back in his seat, eyes on me, afraid classmates will see. Or Jack. I clutched my shirt hem, voice low, both. Why do you fear Jack finding out? I couldn't answer. Maybe because we just broke up last night. Maybe because my relationship with Mark was confusing. I didn't want gossip. Jack and Mark both belonged to worlds different from mine. Honestly, this morning I figured it all out. Jack was probably just infatuated temporarily. It was my mistake, thinking his feelings were deeper. Now that I'm clear on it, no need to dwell. I, an ordinary girl, never dreamed of Cinderella moments. This, if anything, just made me thank Jack for making me more aware. I just wanted to focus on my studies. Mark, I know you're just amused, find teasing me fun. When you get bored, stop seeking me out. I took a deep breath, meeting his eyes. We'll have no ties then, no need for everyone to know, wouldn't you agree? Mark's face turned colder. Without responding, he gestured for me to leave. The car drove off without pause. I stood there, dazed for a moment, then slowly walked toward school. Jack had sent 999 Floyd roses to his new girlfriend. The news spread through the school like wildfire. After all, Jack had pursued me for a year. Yet we were only together for just over a month. Now using the same gesture on someone new. His previous affections seemed comical. Some laughed at me, others who were on better terms sympathized. But I didn't show much emotion. Continued attending classes, library, and dining hall as usual. After classes ended in the afternoon, I headed to a little bakery and made some cookies. Mark didn't come, he sent a driver instead, who only picked up the cookies. Mr. Mark had to return to City A for something today. The driver was an uncle with graying hair who spoke kindly and gently with me. So, do I need to prepare more cookies tomorrow? I'll be back around the same time to pick them up. Is that okay, Miss Nina? Sure. Let's do that, then. For about a week after, I didn't see Mark. But I had to make cookies every day. On the 7th day, the driver asked me to make a double batch of cookies for the next day. Mr. Mark said he needed them for an event tomorrow night. I didn't ask much and just agreed. When I headed back to campus, I happened to see Jack dropping off his new girlfriend. For a split second, our eyes met, but I calmly looked away. Without glancing back, I walked past his car towards the campus gate. Jack called out to me, "Nina, what's up?" With his arm around his girlfriend, Jack still looked at me warmly. So here's the thing, she's really into the cookies you made before. I have a friends gathering tomorrow, and I was wondering if you could make some more. Of course, I'll pay you 3 times the usual rate. Sound good? I shook my head and turned him down. Sorry, I've got papers to write and no time. Jack raised an eyebrow. That's too bad. I didn't say anything else, just turned and walked through the gate. But that night, when I came back from the library, Jack was waiting downstairs at my dorm. Nina. Jack was wearing a simple white shirt. It looked familiar somehow. It took me a moment to remember, that was the shirt he wore when I agreed to date him. I once told him I loved seeing him in white shirts. Made him look so gentle and clean. Is something up? Are you mad about something today? Mad about what? Asking you to make cookies for my girlfriend. Not at all, I really just don't have the time. Mark wants a double batch of cookies, so I naturally can't make any for Jack. You only have one class tomorrow. I have other things to do. Nina, Jack suddenly stepped forward. The lights in front of the dorm were a warm orange, softening his features. During our month of dating, Jack had walked me back many times, under this very light. Once, in a moment of feeling, he wanted to kiss me. But it was crowded, and I was too shy, so I pushed him away. Want to give it another shot with me? If you thought we moved too fast before, we can take things slow this time. We can even move in together after you graduate, okay? The warm light fell on his handsome face. He was my first crush, the man I really liked. I couldn't deny that even now, I felt a little sad about it. But in the end, I still shook my head and said no. Jack's smile faded, growing cold. I won't give you another chance. Don't regret it, Nina. When Mark arrived at the club, it was right at 7 p.m. He took 2 paper bags from the bodyguard. A faint aroma mixed with a hint of rose fragrance. Nina added some wax apple puree to the cookies. She said this fruit helps clear the lungs and is perfect for this weather. He doesn't really care for sweets. But now, maybe he's fond of things connected to her. The attendant respectfully opened the private room door for Mark. When he entered, Jack was lounging on the sofa, smoking. His expression seemed gloomy, as if in a foul mood. Everyone stood up when they saw Mark. Jack put out his cigarette and stood too. Mark, why have you stayed so long in City A this time? Mark chuckled and placed the paper bags on the coffee table. Got caught up in some personal stuff for a few days. As Jack started to speak, his eyes fell on the paper bags. What's that? Cookies. Mark removed his jacket, handing it to the attendant. He picked a sofa to sit on, speaking in his usual laid-back way. They're pretty good, I've been eating them daily. Want to try? Jack's face began to pale. Still, he reached for a paper bag. As the familiar smell wafted up, he also noticed the familiar stamp on the little box inside. Nina loved making cookies and cakes. She had a cartoon stamp she would always use on the boxes. She'd made him cookies several times. But he never liked sweet things, always passing them off to others. Even though Nina made those cookies just for him. Even if her efforts were intended solely for him. He never really appreciated it. Yet now, here were her treats, in Mark's possession. What does this imply? Jack was a bit lost, staring at Mark. Wanting to ask, but resisting the clarity he already understood. Mark's phone conveniently rang. He answered, a tone of curiosity. Where are you now? Lost? Silly. Hold still there, I'll come get you. He hung up, stood, and walked outside. Frozen, Jack asked stiffly, Mark, where are you going? Mark's expression was slightly impatient, but there was a faint smile in his eyes. Meeting someone, she's quite hopeless, can't find the way. Who needs your personal greeting? While Mark put on his suit jacket, he glanced at Jack. With friends, he was always laid back and carefree. Making you forget how formidable and powerful he really is. This time, the rare commanding strength radiated from him. Of course, someone I care about. The club's garden was huge. I was standing under a flowering tree, feeling a bit bored. Mark told me to stay put. So, dutifully, I didn't move around. The white villas were tucked among lush green trees. I didn't know which direction Mark would come from. But somehow, the unease in my heart had slipped away. I sat on a bench, swinging my legs. Until the path's curve revealed his tall, straight figure, coming clearer into view. Nina. Mark called my name. I watched him, forgetting to stand up. The night breeze seemed quieter. In the pond beside me, faint sounds of insects hummed. This man approaching me had shared such intimacy. Yet days without seeing him felt so unfamiliar. Mark reached out, holding my chin gently, lifting my face to the perfect angle for him to lean down and kiss me. Then plunged into a kiss, no hesitation. My breath, the air in my lungs, my aware mind. Stripped away, stolen. The kiss became a series of soft, wet sounds. My neck burned hot, terrified in that dark, quiet night of such intimacy being witnessed. In the end, Mark's warm kiss landed by my ear. "Come back with me tonight." Before I could reply, my gaze shifted to just beyond him. Jack stood there, his face shadowed in night. I couldn't read his eyes. Mark sensed my pause. He straightened up and looked over my shoulder, following my gaze. "Following me, huh?" Mark chuckled, pulled me up, and wrapped me in his arms. "Mark, I think you owe me an explanation," Jack said, sounding relatively calm. "What kind of explanation?" Mark turned his face and gave me a kiss on the cheek. "Now, do you understand?" Mark said. Jack's face was getting darker. "This isn't right, is it?" "What isn't right?" "You know it's over between Nina and me." "Isn't it over?" Mark's arm around me fidgeted. He kept pinching the soft flesh of my waist absent-mindedly. "Weren't you the one afraid she'd do something drastic and asked me to check on her?" Jack still couldn't say the words "steal the girl." After all, he did break up with Nina. He just didn't have the guts to mention it to Mark. "Jack," Mark looked down at him. "You didn't want her." "I happen to like her." "How could you like her?" Jack was stunned. I was surprised too, looking at Mark. But all I could see was his handsome, sharp profile. "Why shouldn't I like her?" Mark hugged me tighter. "She's fun to kiss. She's sweet. Her cookies taste great. Most importantly, she's kind. Even though she's scared of everything. When things happen, she's anything but timid. Facing those punks. Tiny as she is, she gets this bravery from nowhere. Rushes to protect a fellow girl at work. Takes a brutal kick. But doesn't let go of her friend. Maybe it's this contradiction that drew him to her." After that day, he often thought of Nina. Her pale, frightened face, crying but standing her ground. But he was late, just by a step. Jack had been madly pursuing her for a while. And she soon became Jack's girlfriend. Until that night, when Jack suddenly went crazy and broke up with her. I avoided Mark for a long time. Jack tried to see me a few times, but I never met him. Later, he cornered me a few times at the dorm. I was forced to meet him just once. "Nina, is it because of Mark that you won't get back with me?" "It's not because of him, Jack. We're just not right for each other." "It's not just with you, Mark and I aren't right either. I'm going back home after graduation to keep studying. I won't be coming back." "Nina, I admit I was wrong before." Jack looked a bit beaten, but after we broke up, I still found I liked you. "But I don't like you anymore." "Do you like Mark, then?" Jack's eyes were red. "That night, I saw you kissing him, and you didn't push him away." For a moment, I was silent. Not sure how to answer. At first, I was scared of Mark. But sometime later, I wasn't anymore. During the days I avoided him, I'd occasionally think of him. Though I'd quickly realize, someone like him. So high and mighty, proud. He's not from my world. Is it 'cause his background's better than mine? Think what you like. But Nina, someone from his kind of background, would he marry you? "I never thought about marriage," I said. "I told you, I'm going to keep studying. Let's not see each other again, Jack." "Nina." Jack tried to grab me, but I stepped away. I didn't look back at him. Compared to Jack's persistent pestering, Mark surprisingly didn't come after me again. Until the night before I was leaving town. Some local friends organized a farewell party. With goodbyes looming. It might be tough to meet again later. Everyone had a bit to drink. When I went to the restroom, I ran into two drunk men. At first, I didn't realize they were eyeing me. Until I walked out and saw them still smoking outside. Only then did I feel uneasy. Without a phone or a jacket. My sleeveless knee-length dress was actually pretty normal and conservative. Yet their gazes were uncomfortable. "Let me buy you a drink. Wanna join us?" "Sorry, my friends are just in the room ahead. Hanging out with classmates is boring. How about your big brothers show you a fun time?" The two men blocked my path, one on each side. I was a bit panicked but managed to stay composed. Waiters came by now and then, and my friends weren't far. If I shouted, they couldn't do much. But when one grabbed my arm, it was too much. I was just about to yank it away, but he suddenly screamed and flew backward, smashing into the wall. His buddy kicked to the ground and had his face stomped. Mark walked over, a cold look on his face, and stepped hard on the guy's wrist. The sound of breaking bones was horrific. First time I saw this side of Mark. It was like the brutal and ruthless mob boss rumors said he was. "I'd better not see you two around these parts again," Mark ordered. Mark's bodyguards were efficient. They swiftly gagged and dragged them out. The hallway just left me and him. Mark didn't look at me or say a word. I waited a bit, then softly thanked him. He ignored me still. I hesitated, turned away, trying to sneak back to the room. Mark grasped my wrist. Finger marks from the other guy still fresh on my arm. Mark's gaze darkened. "Mark." I tried to pull away, but Mark pressed me against the wall. "How long do you plan to hide from me?" "Silent, just running off back to the mainland?" "I'm just following my plans to keep studying." "So, are you planning to cut ties with me?" I turned my head, fighting a bittersweet feeling inside. There was never anything between us to begin with. Truth is, when Mark said he liked me that night, I felt happy. But after avoiding him, he hadn't appeared again. I had slipped back into my self-doubt and denial. Never been loved, never favored. Accepting being abandoned felt easier somehow. "Nina, take a look at my back." "Your back?" Mark didn't say anything. Just turned around to face away. His black shirt clinging to his lean and strong build. I was a bit overwhelmed as I rolled up my shirt under his guidance. Only a small section of my waist was showing, but it was already covered in scars from whippings. I was stunned. "Mark? I haven't looked for you lately because I've been healing." "Why were you hurt?" "Family punishment, got whipped 19 times. It really hurt, almost couldn't bear it. If it weren't for my old man feeling sorry for me, you wouldn't have seen me." "Why the punishment?" I didn't know when, but my vision had already blurred. My fingertips trembled, wanting to touch those healing scars but too scared to touch the twisted and fierce scars. Because I didn't want an arranged marriage, I wanted to marry the person I liked. Mark turned around, his slightly rough fingertips wiping away the tears at the corner of my eyes. "Thinking about her, she's so timid and conservative. Kissed her a few times, and if I didn't take responsibility, she'd definitely hide away and cry secretly. Because I kissed her a few times and didn't kiss enough, wanted to do more, so why not just marry her instead?" "I never said I'd marry you." My voice broke, tears rolling down my cheeks. At first, I wasn't allowed to kiss, but I did. "So now that I want to marry you, you have to obediently agree." Mark is still like when we first met, so forceful and domineering. "Who's like you, always bullying me, scaring me, just like the first time we met?" "That's because I like you." "Who likes someone like that?" "I've never liked anyone else, no experience. But in the future, I'll learn slowly." Mark finished talking and didn't wait for me to speak, just kissed me deeply. He held my wrists, pinning them above my head. With the other hand, he grabbed my chin, forcing me to face his deep kiss. Until finally, I went weak in the knees from his kiss. He finally let go of one hand, pulling me close by my waist. Just as I was catching my breath, I saw the door to the box not far away open. A few classmates were probably looking for me. Nina. They just called out and quickly covered their mouths, turned around, and ran. After a few steps, they didn't forget to shout back at me, "We didn't see anything." My cheeks were burning like a cooked shrimp. "Kiss you once, and you're shy. If I really do something, will you faint?" Mark. Mark pinched my burning face. "Nina, marry me. If I don't promise, will you throw me into the sea?" My eyes were red, but a smile shone through. Mark seemed to seriously think about it, couldn't bear to. "Can you give me some time?" After a while, Mark nodded, "Okay." After I returned from G City, I rented a small room and focused on preparing for graduate school. But I didn't enjoy peace for long before my estranged father showed up unexpectedly. His and my stepmother's son dropped out of high school. After a few years of messing around, he suddenly wanted to get married. The girl's family has a disabled older brother who can't find a wife. So, they asked for a huge dowry, planning to use it to buy a bride for his older brother. He and my stepmother couldn't afford it, so they thought of arranging a marriage for me instead. Naturally, I refused. He immediately flew into a rage, like when I was a child, beating me and my mother. Once again, he raised his hand to hit me, but I pushed him back harshly. He's old now, his body drained by smoking, alcohol, and gambling. I no longer feared him like I used to. "I didn't raise you to just sit around. If you don't agree, I'll have to drag you back." He shouted loudly for the men outside to come in. As they dragged me out, my phone, lying beneath the bed, had already dialed Mark's number. Before I came back, he reminded me to set his number as a speed dial. He knew a bit about my family situation, so he always worried. Speaking of which, people's connections are sometimes really strange. The man I once feared going toe-to-toe with. Now, in times of danger, he's the first person I think of. And somehow, I've never doubted whether Mark would help me, whether he'd appear like a hero. I was deep inside sure he wouldn't let anything happen to me. I was taken to a remote mountain village. Getting there took an extra day because of the bad roads. By the next evening, as the van reached the village edge, a black Hummer arrived, almost at the same time, kicking up dust, blocking the van's path. Several large bodyguards quickly jumped out of the car. Then Mark, wearing a black jacket and sunglasses. When his tall figure broke into my view, my heart suddenly pounded hard. The leading men from the movies I once watched as a girl, in this instant, became real. Those people turned pale from fear. Soon after, the sound of sirens filled the air. Mark strode to me, kicking away the man still holding my arm. Seeing my hands still tied behind me, his cold aura made me shiver. I could feel him struggling to control his anger. Even after the car drove far away, Mark's expression remained unfriendly. After applying ointment to my wrists, he didn't speak again. I raised the partition in the back of the car, just like that rainy night when we first shared a ride. I climbed onto his lap, sitting quietly. Then gently wrapped my arms around him. "Nina, I'm still mad." "I know." I took a deep breath, probably using the most courage in my life. Raised my face, gingerly kissed his chin. "I'm comforting you, Mark." He acted a bit smug, pinching my chin, pushing my face away. "I'm not that easy to comfort." "So, how should I comfort you?" "You figure it out." He let go of my chin, turning away, not looking at me. I felt like laughing but also on the verge of tears. Finally, I lay lightly in his embrace. "Mark, let's get married." He still didn't respond, but a few seconds later, he wrapped his arms around me. The mountain road was bad, making the car shake violently. "Nina, don't squirm on me. It's the car shaking." My words weren't finished before the car jolted again. I don't know if it was him or me who initiated it. Anyway, the car wobbled for as long as it did. It seemed like Mark and I kissed just as long. 3 months later, Mark and I had a low-key wedding. I wanted to keep studying, so I begged Mark for a long time. He finally agreed to delay announcing it publicly and forego a ceremony. To let me study quietly. But these agreements came with one condition. Though the wedding would wait, the honeymoon night couldn't be skipped. The day we got our license, Mark took me to our new home. I went to the bathroom and took quite a while to come out. Until Mark came knocking. I hesitated for a good while before opening the door. The clothes and items in the new home were all prepared by the staff. Maybe because today was considered our wedding night. The nightgown was a bit too sexy. With such a skimpy piece of fabric, I was too embarrassed to wear it out. But Mark wore even less, just a towel around his waist. Don't faint later. Mark leaned in, picking me up. I was so scared, I quickly reached out to cover up. But the nightgown was too short and too revealing. Covering the top meant I couldn't cover the bottom. When we were so exposed, I couldn't even open my eyes. Mark's kisses trailed downwards. Eventually, they stopped at the peak. Nina, he whispered softly as he kissed me, until I couldn't hold back and bit my lip. Soft moans slipped through my lips. Turns out our Nina isn't small everywhere, huh? Mark said. My cheeks were flushed, and my eyes were filled with warmth and emotion. Mark grabbed my hand and guided it downwards. My eyes widened suddenly. Mark? What's wrong? Why is it different from last time? Which one do you like better? I'm scared of this one. Mark suddenly chuckled. You really know how to please your man. Later, for about half a minute, I was in a daze. Mark kissed me back to consciousness, and he was deeply connected with me. Mark, I think I just had a dream. What dream? He slowed down and asked gently. I was in a vast wilderness with lots of fog, I couldn't see anything clearly. There was also a big beast. I was terrified. I felt like I was going to die, but then you showed up in the dream. Did I save you? I shook my head and looked at him, feeling a bit wronged. You killed the beast, but then you turned into an even scarier beast and swallowed me whole. Mark couldn't help but laugh. Well, that dream isn't wrong. I did swallow you up. He kissed me, adding a bit of mischief, and I'm going to keep doing it forever.